You know that device you've got in your pocket, your smartphone. It's probably the most personal thing you own. It's got your conversations, your photos, basically your entire digital life. So, what happens when the government wants to carve out a permanent spot for itself right inside it? Well, today we're going to dive into that exact question through the story of an Indian government app called Sanchar Sathi and the massive national debate it kicked off.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a heck of a question, isn't it? Feels like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But for millions of people, this wasn't hypothetical. This almost became reality. And it sparked an absolute firestorm over privacy, security, and who's really in control.
So how did we even get to this point? This wasn't just some idea being floated around. Nope. This was an actual directive. A plan was already in motion that could have completely changed the relationship between people and the government, all through the phones we use every single day.
Okay, so the order that came down from the Department of Telecommunications was super clear. It said that within 90 days, every single new smartphone sold in India had to have the Sanchar Sathi app pre-installed. What about the phones already on store shelves? Well, the plan was to push the app onto them through mandatory software updates. There was no thank you.
Now, to be fair, the government's reasoning here came from a very real place. I mean, phone theft in India is a huge problem. And digital scams, those fake KYC messages, the endless fraudulent calls, they're a daily headache and a real danger for millions. So the government argued, hey, we need a powerful tool to protect our citizens.
And that tool was Sanchar Sathi. On paper, it was meant to be this all-in-one digital security guard, designed to put the power back in your hands with a whole suite of protective features.
And look, some of these features were genuinely useful. If your phone gets stolen, you could block it across the entire country using its unique IMEI number. You could report sketchy calls and texts directly. You could even check to see if someone had used your ID to open a phone line without you knowing. It was sold as a digital shield for the average person.
And the government wasn't just guessing here. They had some numbers to back this up. Even before this whole mandate thing, when Sanchar Sathi was just a voluntary app, it had already helped get back over 723,000 lost or stolen phones. They argued that making it mandatory would just make those numbers go way, way up.
So you can imagine the official statements, right? The government was painting this picture of empowerment, of safety. They said it wasn't about control. It was about giving people peace of mind in a pretty chaotic digital world. A noble goal for sure, but it was the how that was about to become a massive problem. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn, because the backlash that came, it wasn't really about what the app did. It was about the complete lack of choice. It was this feeling that something was being forced onto people's most private spaces, whether they liked it or not.
This slide just nails the core conflict. On one side, you have the government's order. The app is baked in, you can't remove it, and it's always there. And on the other side, you have this growing wave of public fear, a fear of surveillance, of losing control, of privacy just vanishing.
The reaction online, it was instant, and it was brutal. On places like Reddit, people did not hold back. They saw the whole anti-scam angle as a Trojan horse, a convenient excuse for what they believed was the real goal: mass surveillance. The trust just wasn't there. And that feeling didn't stay on internet forums for long. It boiled over into the mainstream political arena fast. Opposition leaders jumped on it, framing it as a straight-up attack on fundamental rights. The language got really intense. Big Brother, unconstitutional, a dystopian tool. This was no longer just about tech policy. It was a battle over civil liberties. Then the legal experts started to weigh in, and this quote from the print just perfectly sums up the problem. It's a total shift in the relationship. Consent is just gone. The state isn't a service you choose to use anymore. It's a permanent fixture on your device. And that raised huge worries about something called function creep, the fear that the app could secretly be given more and more power over time.
So you might be wondering, is this normal? Is this how other democracies handle things like cyber fraud and phone theft? Well, let's take a quick look and see how this approach stacks up globally.
Yeah, when you put it all side by side like this, wow. India's initial plan was a major outlier. The US uses tech that works behind the scenes on the network level. The EU puts the legal responsibility on the tech companies themselves. Singapore has a very similar app, Scam Shield, but it's 100% voluntary. No other big democracy was trying to force a non-removable government app onto its people.
So, facing this huge public outcry, political attacks, and all sorts of legal questions, the government was pretty much backed into a corner. The pressure was on big time. And that led to a really dramatic, really sudden turning point in this whole saga.
And there it is, a complete 180. In a public statement, the Union Minister for Communications, Jyotiraditya Scindia, made the government's new position crystal clear. The mandate, it was off. The app was now optional. You, the user, would have the final say.
So the final position was a total walk back from that first order. The government emphasized that the app is fully voluntary, that you can delete it whenever you want, and that the whole point was to empower citizens, not spying on them. The public's right to choose was, in the end, respected.
All right, so what's the big takeaway from this whirlwind? What does this story about a government order and a massive public pushback really tell us about the world we live in today?
You know, when you boil it all down, this is a fascinating example of democracy in the digital age. It proves that because our phones are so personal, any move by the government that feels like an intrusion is going to be incredibly sensitive. This wasn't just a policy debate. It felt personal to millions. And it shows that when enough people feel like their digital rights are on the line, their voice can be loud enough to make a government completely change its mind.
And so, where does that leave the Sanchar Sathi app today? Well, it's still out there. You can go download it from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store right now. But it exists as a tool you can choose to use, not a requirement you're forced to live with.
The fight over this specific app might be settled, but the fundamental question it brought up is not going away. It's a question we're all going to have to face again and again. Where do we draw that line between safety and freedom? How much control are we willing to trade for a little more security? Definitely something to think about.